The film, released in 2022, tells the story of prisoners in the Modelo 77 prison in Barcelona, Spain. Inmates in the prison were being held without trial. They were locked up without knowing when they would be released. Efforts to apply for amnesty for the prisoners were rejected by the government, so the prisoners broke into the prison to escape. In 1976, the Spanish state experienced a regime change transition, so at that time, the Spanish government needed to be more stable. One of the most affected was the judicial system. Several new prisoners entered the Modelo 77 prison in Barcelona, with all their clothes stripped. One of the prisoners was named Manuel. His body was examined with great care. Then each prisoner was given a bucket of water to drink and to clean himself. After the examination, Manuel was placed in a sanitary cell for 7 days. A prisoner named Blackie distributed food to him. Not only that, Blackie slipped 5 cigarettes for Manuel as a sign of friendship. The next day, a lawyer tried to see Manuel. Manuel was a young accountant convicted of a 6 to 8 year sentence for embezzling the equivalent of 1,200 euros. 3 days without a shower in the sanitation cell made Manuel out of control. He banged on the door until he was finally met by the head of the prison. But instead of taking a shower, Manuel got beaten rather. The next day, someone gave Manuel cigarettes, and he gave a letter that said, "Hang in there. You are not alone." After 7 days in the uninfected cell, Manuel was transferred to the prison cell. After going through a layered barred door, Manuel was placed in a cell room with Blackie. The other diesel convict was named Pino. Pino warned Manuel not to make a scene. Pino really maintained his privacy in his bed. Apart from that, Pino had several novels that he rented out. The next day in the prison visiting room, Blackie met his wife and 3 children. Meanwhile, Manuel's lover did not visit Manuel. Instead, his girlfriend's older sister, Lucia, saw him. Several inmates robbed all of Manuel's clothes the next day in the prison yard. When Manuel complained about this to the warden demanded payment from Manuel. Luckily, one of the inmates offered to help him. Then in the cell, a doctor named Boni gave Manuel clothes for free. In addition, Dr. Boni treated Manuel's injured jaw. Then 2 other prisoners entered the cell. They offered Manuel to join the Prisoner Rights Association, but Manuel refused because he didn't want to get in trouble. While walking in the prison yard, Manuel saw a gang of convicts who had taken his clothes, but Blackie held Manuel back from retaliating. Blackie explained that the person who stole his clothes was Marbella. Marbella is a highly respected person in the prison. This was because Marbella often paid tribute to the prison wardens. Then Blackie asked for a job in a ball manufacturing factory, but unfortunately the workshop only accepted Blackie but not Manuel. The next day, Lucia visited Manuel. Lucia's arrival was intended to support Manuel's mentality, but unfortunately, Manuel just left Lucia. Arriving at the cell, Pino and Blackie were talking. When Pino offered Manuel a drink, Manuel wiped the bottle. This offended Pino and made them argue, but luckily Blackie's joke managed to break the ice. Then on the field, Boni gives a piece of paper to protest against Manuel. In November 1976, suddenly the wardens took Blackie out of the cell. It turned out that Blackie and several other prisoners had allegedly dug a prison pit to escape. The next day, several wardens approached Pino. They reported that during interrogation, Blackie had a heart attack and died. The incident prompted the inmates to demonstrate. Boni and Manuel took advantage of this moment by distributing demonstration flyers. The leaflets contained the demands of the inmates for amnesty, but as a result, Manuel was arrested after being locked up for 1 week in solitary confinement. A lawyer named Arnaud from a legal aid organization met with Manuel. It was Arnaud who asked Manuel to be released from solitary confinement. In addition, Arnaud promised to help Manuel to expedite the trial. After Manuel returned to the cell, his relationship with Pino got better. But then at night, the wardens took 2 detainees out of the cell until the following day. The 2 inmates brought by the warden never returned. This sparked a mass demonstration on the prison blog. The prisoners injured their arms, so the 2 comrades were returned quickly. Like it or not, the chief warden had to call a doctor to treat the prisoners. In addition, the event triggered the arrival of journalists to cover the news. As a result, the condition of the prisoners in the Modelo prison was spread by radio. Of course, this is good progress for the prisoners. The next day, Lucia visited Manuel. Lucia reported that the community would be demonstrating so that the prisoners got the right to amnesty. Society considered that the act of imprisonment without trial has crossed the line. It turned out that it was confirmed that a few days later, the people demonstrated, demanding an amnesty for the prisoners. Finally, Pino began to join the struggle of the demonstrators. Pino headed to the 6th floor block to meet Marbella. He asked Marbella to join the demonstration. The prisoners planned to stage a big riot in the prison to attract the attention of the journalists and the public. Initially, Marbella refused because she thought the effort would be in vain. When Pino reminded Marbella about her family, Marbella's decision changed. While returning to the cell, the cyber prison searched Pino's bed. His meeting with Marbella arouses the suspicions of the prison wardens. Then the wardens burned all of Pino's books. A few days later, the prisoner's plan was executed. A warden began to be taken hostage to open the gate. The convicts destroyed the guard post. They also took out all the stuff to burn. Then the inmates moved past the 6th floor to climb the prison roof. On the top of the prison, the inmates shouted amnesty rights, which the community welcomed. The demonstration lasted into the night. Then the prison asked to negotiate. Manuel and Boni became detainee representatives. In the negotiating room, the head of the penitentiary promised to submit an amnesty right to the detainees from the government. He also promised not to deploy riot police if the detainees stopped the demonstration. Finally, the prisoners stopped the march and lined up to return to the cells. But after they got out, the riot police suddenly ambushed the prisoners being thrown back into their cells one by one. Manuel was asked to sign a prison transfer letter. In the letter, Manuel would be transferred to the Guadalajara prison, but he did not say a word. Finally, the warden gave Manuel one day to think. When he returned to the cell, Pino told Manuel that in his first year in prison, Pino was very optimistic that he would be free and return to his family. Pino planned to escape from prison with his comrades in his second year. However, entering the third year, Pino began to despair. At that time, Pino thought he would be in prison for life. The following day, Dr. Boni was taken by the warden to be transferred to another prison. Manuel was very sure that Boni would suffer the same fate as Blackie. In the afternoon, Manuel was visited by Lucia. Manuel, who initially had closed his heart, began to feel love again when he looked at Lucia. But at night, the riot police took Pino and Manuel by force. They were put in a detention car without knowing where they would be taken. It turned out that Pino and Manuel were born and imprisoned in their homes. In prison, Pino and Manuel entered the sanitation room. Manuel was asked to remove all his clothes, then the warden sprinkled lime powder all over Manuel's body. Then Manuel was beaten unconscious. Manuel was moved to a temporary isolation room. Everyday civilians entered his cell only to give them a beating. A photo of Lucia was Manuel's only motivation to stay. After 1 week in solitary confinement, Manuel was transferred to the primary cell. Without waiting long, Manuel swallowed his peer bed to enter the treatment room. In the treatment room, Manuel asked the doctor to treat Pino. If not, Manuel threatens he would eat the whole bed. Thanks to this incident in 1978, Pino and Manuel were again transferred to the Modelo prison. They learn about the new convicts who become the Prisoners' Rights Association. The efforts of the Prisoners' Rights Association are more demanding than ever at this time. They plan to send a letter directly to the Spanish Minister of the Interior. Then a lawyer representing the government met with Manuel. The lawyer mentioned prisoner rights to him, but Manuel said that in prison, the wardens rule. Even with great ease, they would ignore the rights of prisoners. Then finally in the summer, the Spanish senators approved the request for an amnesty of prisoners. Ironically, a few days later, after the submission of a proposal from the senator, the chief minister refused to grant a pardon for the prisoners. As a result, the prisoners will continue to be imprisoned without knowing when they will be free. Not wanting to make Lucia wait without certainty, Manuel deliberately left Lucia to make her give up hope. Desperate from the situation, Manuel expressed his emotions by beating the prison guards. As a result, Manuel was locked in solitary confinement for 1 week. When Bino picked him up to return to the cell, Manuel was so depressed that he lost his appetite. In May 1978, Pino took Manuel to the treatment room. Then Pino broke into the door leading to the basement. With a simple trick, Pino closed the door again. Just below the engine room, there was ventilation towards the prison yard. They planned to dig through the engine room floor to the sewer. Kicking the ball into the ventilation wall aims to cover up the sound of the hammer hitting. A few weeks later, a convict technician installed a light in the dugout. Day by day, the dug hole is getting deeper. However, Ruby peeked from the vent. If Ruby reported it to the prison civilian, Pino and Manuel's lives would be in danger. But it turned out that Ruby wanted to join the run. Even so, Ruby, who had a close relationship with prison civilians, worried Manuel and Pino. but the excavations continued until, finally, Manuel managed to penetrate the sewer wall. Then in June 1978, the escape attempt began. Pino gave a change of clothes and a new identity card for Manuel. Then Ruby took a warden as a hostage to follow them. Before exiting the sewer, the warden was released. After that, with a beating hearts, Manuel and Pino rushed to get on a city bus. Meanwhile, Ruby was caught by the riot police. After the bus's wheels turned, Manuel and Pino could breathe a little easier. Then at a crossroads, Manuel and Pino parted ways. Without realizing it, Pino had prepared money for his escape. Later in the afternoon, Manuel approached Lucia's optician and took her to leave. Since then, association in custody has been banned in prisons. Amnesty for detainees has never been given if at that time. So what did you think of this movie? Leave it in the comments below. And if you liked the video, please like and subscribe for more movie recaps. See you in the next video.